I'll go ahead and start this video with a disclaimer. The gear discussed in this video is really personal to me, so I will allow to share some more personal subjective opinions than usual and talk more than usual, as this is probably the most subjective and contradictory effect on all of the forum discussions, one that often seems to stir some shitpot, cause bans on forums, and for which new threads are opened on the gear page every week or so since the forum started. If you want to skip the talk, please refer to the chapters below to jump to the shootout. After recently going more serious about my videos on this channel, I made a deliberate choice to share my personal opinion on the gear I'm discussing and not pussyfoot around issues. It's a channel in its infancy, so I have no sponsors or big names supporting me, so I can be honest, as I have no toes to step on. I will not feature products on the channel which I do not find subjectively good, as I have the utmost respect to people in this niche business, and I don't want my subjective impressions to sway people away from a product that others might love. But I decided not to hide my excitement for stuff that I really love. I decided to always tell people what I prefer personally and why. The mission of the format of these videos is to make these differences really audible, even through all the oral limitations of not being able to play the gear firsthand. I decided to tell my opinion because I think it is the closest substitute to a first-hand impression one could get over the internet, as hearing tonal differences is one thing, but feeling the instrument under your finger is an entirely different matter. I consider it to be honest to my viewers. With that out of the way, here's a short bedtime story. One of the first 3 guitar pedals I bought 15 years ago after purchasing my first amp, a JTM45 clone, was a Uni-Vibe type pedal. It was the Sweet Sound Ultra Vibe version 2, which I imported from the US after reading through forums for months and months. I ran it with a step-down transformer, and as a student I tried to not ever think about the value-added tax and shipping costs I paid for it. The other 2 pedals were a Dunlop J-Age F1 Fuzz Face and a wedge-shaped Octavio. You can guess 3 times who got me into electric guitar. And while I felt the Fuzz Face and the Octavio were getting me the tones I was seeking, the vibe never felt right. I always attributed it to my playing skills, lack of patience and practice. And while it certainly is still a part of the puzzle until this day, I later found out that this vibe had more of a later Shinee sound to it. It had a pointier wave shape than the early Honey units. Then over the years I tried an array of popular Uni-Vibe clones, the Funky Vibe, the CB1, Cognu Vibe. I built my own 1-to-1 replica clone. All of these were fine sounding units and had their sweet spots that were unique, and you could dial in lots of Trower-y, Pink Floyd-y stuff, but none seemed to be capable of the Hendrix vibe tone. And then I got a chance to buy a God Vibe, which instantly got me much closer to those Hendrix tones I was seeking. It is as if the pedal is dialed in for those specific tones. It is a nice rub, lots of punch, dynamics and clarity. It's all qualities that usually were mutually exclusive in other vibes. But it being a 100-volt device and still having the feeling I'm not 100% there, I was still looking for alternatives. After this journey, to me the Uni-Vibe seems like the most elusive, hard to copy and hard to communicate verbally about effect, as it is very complex and deep effect tonally and also circuit-wise. So I thought I'd try another round of more recent vibes, and I stumbled over the Gypsy Vibe by the Pedal Pawn. In fact, there is a side story to that. I almost bought the same original Uni-Vibe pedal from eBay that the Gypsy Vibe was based on. It was missing the faceplate, looked miserable, and was probably very much loved and played, but Chris King Robinson was faster than me. I later stumbled over Chris's YouTube clips with that vibe, and I concluded that it was a golden unit. Those were the best vibe clips that I've ever heard, bar none, apart maybe from a few old recordings. If you ever saw the video clip of Tom Bukovac and Kenny Wayne Shepherd comparing 3 original vibes, this has the sound what Kenny says about one of these 3 specimens. It's the sound everyone is after. It is capable of that unmistakable, thick, underwater-like tone. And then after some years, the Gypsy Vibe came out. As a side note, I got it used. I have no affiliation or sponsorship by Pedal Pawn, and I'm sharing my own impressions here. So let's take a listen to both units back to back and hear the differences. As always, my process and signal chain is detailed in the video description below. During the comparison you will see the yellow LED light on the remote loopy light up to the corresponding pedal. So let's dive into the comparison. What is better in a musical context is entirely subjective, so I'm going to explain my parameters on which I judge the vibe in this specific case. In the Uni-Vibe recordings of the 60s and 70s, every vibe sounds different, even back then. But my personal favorite always was Hendrix's unit, Machine Gun being the ultimate vibe tone. It has that thick, round attack, the deep and syrupy throb that makes everything sound like it is underwater. And despite many people claiming that the original Uni-Vibes did not have as much intensity as the Gypsy Vibe, I know the specific unit this was based upon did, and I hear the same in various Hendrix recordings, where he adjusts the settings on the vibe and you can get a short glimpse of how intense and fat it can get. He seemed to mostly back it off quite a lot on the intensity, or use the low speed with the higher intensity. This is the first vibe that gets me really close to the Machine Gun palm mute tone, as it requires a rather slow speed and really lots of intensity. Just as the God Vibe swept away the competition to my ear, so is the Gypsy the king over the God Vibe for my personal taste. But the most amazing thing is that, unlike any other vibe I've tried, it lets you dial back the intensity a lot without screwing up the tone and making it too muddy or flat. It has usable tones all across the speed and intensity settings. I can just say flat out that the R&D behind this is impeccable, as I know how difficult it is to get a vibe sound right and to nail those almost magic tonal qualities. To my ear, if you want the Hendrix type vibe tones, There's nothing better than the Gypsy on the market, and don't get misled by claims it has more intensity than original vibes. If you want less intensity, it handles dialing back the intensity pot better than any other vibe I've tried. This is the first vibe I've owned that sounds fantastic even on 40% intensity, and you can dial it back even more for more phasey sounds before the effect gradually disappears. So it will easily give you also Trower and Gilmour tones in spades, which to me always felt easier to copy. The Gypsy Vibe is totally silent, has a great range of speed and depth, takes an 18-volt center negative power supply, and works well with switching type power supplies, with which some Uni-Vibe clones reportedly do not work together well. The God Vibe has comparatively less intensity even on medium speed range, but it loses more intensity at both extremes of that speed dial. The vibrato side on it always felt a tiny bit too weak for my tastes. The integrated transformer is great in that you do not need an external power supply, but it also can buzz into the chain in certain conditions. At the time of recording this video, I was not able to get rid of that buzz for whatever reason. I never figured it out. No ground lifts at any spot in the chain helped the issue, no different step-down transformers or placement, or even cables. Just had a bad day today. But these types of issues are typical to pedals with built-in transformers. Meanwhile, the Gypsy seems very happy every day, and so do I the more I play it. The great thing about the God Vibe is that when it is set in its sweet spot, which is a medium speed and maximum intensity, it has lots of punch and clarity at the same time. It is thick and very clear. That's a combination of qualities that almost no other vibe can copy. The basic tonality of the Gypsy Vibe is quite a bit thicker than the God Vibe. It is maybe a tiny bit less punchy compared to the God Vibe in its sweet spot, but apart from that, the Gypsy Vibe is extremely versatile, as it seems to have sweet spots all over the place on all possible speed settings and intensity settings, and that is something where the God Vibe doesn't really excel. My big issue with the Gypsy Vibe, and I'm saying this with all due respect to the team behind this, as after trying to develop a hardware product myself during the COVID supply chain crisis, I know what it means to get something done properly these days. So my big issue is the ridiculous size. I've examined the guts of a God Vibe. It is a 1-to-1 Uni-Vibe circuit, even with a built-in AC-DC transformer in a 125B enclosure, like a standard enclosure size. All of that is done on a do-it-yourself etched PCB board and through whole components. And that is 1/4 of the size of this pedal. So I know for sure that in a mass-produced professional production, at least this size has to be possible. But I also understand that it was probably not a priority. They focused on the main aspect, tone, and maybe even made a deliberate decision to stick with a huge box as a marketing statement that it is a real deal that you are getting here and not skimmed down modern version. I have respect for that, but I kindly urge everyone interested in this vibe in a smaller format to put some friendly and patient pressure on pedal pawn for version 2 of the same thing in at least a BB-sized box, if not a 125B, which is of course crammed full to the last millimeter. I already talked to Chris about this, and he told me they have their hands full with production and other developments, and a smaller version 2 is not in sight. I really hope that it might happen sometime in the future. Meanwhile, I'm sticking this to my board and throwing something else out, as this is going nowhere till a smaller replacement by Chris and his team is made. For the first time, I've lost interest in any other vibes, and that is the biggest testament to this product after a 15-year-long search. So kudos to you, Chris, and to the Pedal Pawn team. So that concludes my little big Uni-Vibe journey and rant. I hope you enjoyed it and could take something with you from it. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this, and see you around in the next one.